1, on.
Welcome to RTF Sports Talk on this beautiful Sunday edition. This will be one of our last regular season NFL Sunday editions, joined as always by Buck Nasty the 4th and Grand Jefe the 17th. How are we doing today, guys?
I'm doing all right. It's cold out here in El Paso. We got some snow yesterday.
It's that snow that will melt in like a day because it's always 65 and sunny there. Don't let Billy lie to you guys.
No, it melted yesterday, but we got a little bit.
Oh, it is cold here. It's
yesterday.
It's like 20 degrees here or something like that. So.
All right, guys. This is it. This is the end of the regular season. We're going to approach into the NFL Week 17. You know, as much as I love there being football Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, there is something glorious about every game going to happen today. Yeah, and I'm very excited about that. But we're going to ease into that. We're going to start with what we saw last night. First off, we had Clemson versus Notre Dame, 2 versus 3 in the college football playoff. It was not even close. Clemson won that 30-3. Give me your recap on that, starting with you, Billy.
What I saw was a team in Notre Dame that looked to be outmatched. Clemson probably could have put that game away very early, but they also made a lot of mistakes early. I think maybe those first-time jitters for Lawrence. Also, Notre Dame was bringing a lot of pressure at the beginning of the game, and that was making Trevor Lawrence move off his spot. He couldn't sit in the pocket, step up, and throw the ball. He had to throw the ball on the run a lot of times. I thought towards that second quarter, after they got that first touchdown, I think that's when they started to settle down. And I seen the Clemson team that I watched mostly all year, and that's Trevor Lawrence being able to sling the ball like he has. I think he had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Ian Book on the other side, he looked as if he was a first-time starter in a big game. No touchdowns, 1 interception for him on 12 or 34. 17-34. That's not good at all. But yeah, I just seen a Clemson team that's performed all year. Hunter Renfrow and Rodgers and Trevor Lawrence and Etienne. You know, I've seen a collective group, a collective win, a good coaching by Dabo Swinney, bringing the guys back down to earth, telling them to calm down, and Clemson did what they did and proved to all of us that Notre Dame probably shouldn't have been in there in the first place.
All right.
Mike, what about you?
I just want to start out here, but I'm not taking anything away from Clemson whatsoever. They are a very good team. They're going to give Alabama a great game in that championship game, but Notre Dame is 0-8 in their last 8 major games that they played in the postseason, and I believe they are 0-6 on the quote-unquote New Year's six games. So this shows you that their regular season does not really prep them for these postseason big games. Yes, they do have some big names on their schedule like USC, I'm drawing blanks here, but they have a few big games, but they have that one large game. They have 2-3 weeks off to kind of stumble and find their way, and then they have that one big game again. They can step up and perform for that one game again, and they stumble around. So I think this kind of proves that it is time for Notre Dame to get into a conference to like really, if they ever want to have a chance at winning a national championship game or a playoff game in general, they need that competition throughout the year, week in and week out, to prep them for games like this. Because just playing...
Okay, Mike, to cut you off on that one, I have a quick question about that exact statement you're about to make. So I'll give you a couple more seconds of floor time to address that conference question here in a second. But let me ask you this. And now, obviously, I'm looking at small picture. I'm not going to take into the last 4 years of the account of what Clemson's done. If you were to compare Clemson and Notre Dame's schedule this year, I would say they're pretty close. Does that kind of make you rethink the toughness of their schedule? Because even though they're not fully committed to the ACC, they have some contracted partners with the ACC. And you throw in USC, you throw in Vanderbilt, you throw in these teams. For the most part,
I mean, Florida State.
But they also have to prove themselves. They had to win their conference championship game. They actually had to perform week in and week out to stay on top of that conference to go to the conference championship game.
I mean, Clemson could have lost the conference championship game and probably still would have made it.
I don't think so.
Based on their dominance throughout the season.
I think if they would have stumbled in their conference championship game, they would have probably been on the outside, like looking in, because you had those teams like Michigan that were right there, Ohio State even Florida. I mean, all those teams were right there looking in, and like yes, at the end of the day, I think the committee, the world wanted Clemson versus Alabama, but they also wanted a way to put that extra SEC team in there too, like a Georgia, LSU.
So, Billy, you think they're going to pick Georgia over a one-loss Clemson?
Oh, yeah, I think they would have took a one-loss Georgia over Clemson just because nobody think the ACC is really good outside of Clemson. Florida State has had a down year. Miami had a down year. So I think a two-loss Georgia team that battled Alabama the way they did, I think they would have found a way to put them in, or at least a one-loss conference champ Ohio State, I think would have got in. But Mike, to your point about Notre Dame's schedule, I don't think. Yeah, I do agree that I don't think it's fair that they don't get to play in a conference. They don't have to go against those juggernauts, i.e. Alabama, or right now how Clemson, Ohio State, and how these guys are dominating their conference year in and year out right now, especially Clemson for the last 4 years in ACC. So I agree with you on that point, but their schedule is pretty solid. I mean, they can't help that this was a down year for a lot of the teams that they scheduled. When they scheduled this Florida State team, this was coming off of a national championship. So who would have thought that, coming off a national championship 3 years later or 4 years later past Jameis Winston, we would be out of the bowl game, fighting even be recognized. So, yeah, I agree with the schedule portion as far as conference championship, but it's not as if that they just had a cupcake schedule. Well, I mean, they had Michigan, they had a Florida State, they had a Northwestern, they had a USC. They had some Power 5 names in there. It was just a down year for those teams.
Right. Yeah, and let's not. Great point, Bill. Let's not let 4 months blind the fact that they beat this Michigan team. Before this Michigan team imploded against Florida, imploded against Ohio State, this Michigan team was in the top 4, and they was the only blemish on that record for about 90% of the season. So, I mean, look, I get there's something for Clemson doing this over and over. This is their 4th straight year, but I'm also. I can't just say, well, Notre Dame played. It's not like they played a bunch of FCS schools, Army, Navy, Temple, Old Dominion. I mean, there was. To Bill's point, I got to go with Billy on this one. There was a lot of toughness on that schedule, and I'm
not saying there is not a lot of toughness on that schedule, but it is something to say about a team that has to grind in conference games week in, and like you are familiar seeing these teams over and over and over, and you have a hatred for these teams. Yes, they have a rivalry with USC. It's a very big rivalry, very big game, but it is something about conference play that wears teams out. I mean, like, I can't explain it. It's something about conference plays that wears teams out.
We'll get to that because there's some questions to go there. Let's move on here. Let's get real quick on this. 2012, Notre Dame, this conversation was surrounding Notre Dame. They got allowed into the BCS championship and got beat 42-14 by an Alabama team. You never heard them in BCS talk after that. Will this hurt their credit until they join a conference game, until they show some dominance? Is this going to hurt their credit, and are they going to lose the benefit of the doubt if they go undefeated next year or the year after in the eyes of the college football committee?
Mike, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. I don't think it will, because they are 0-6 in BCS or CFP games. So I don't think it really hurts them in the end, because they do have such a big name and that history in the years past. So I feel the only way it would truly hurt them is if they have a one loss. Then I feel they're on the outside looking in.
Okay, yeah, I'll let Mike go first because I thought he was going to say something different. Yeah, that's exactly the point I was going to make. They're still Notre Dame, and although what they've been lately, that still won't impact what they were for a lot of people. And a lot of those people that's sitting in those chairs watch those Notre Dame teams. So, yeah, I don't think you have any it won't factor into them getting in recent years. They're undefeated, as Mike said. If they're undefeated, I don't think there's a question.
It is kind of like, would you rather have a one-loss Georgia team or a one-loss Notre Dame team? At the end of the day, if it's one-loss team each, they are going to allow the SEC team in there because of the conference. But if they're undefeated, they are in.
Undefeated they're in. Undefeated.
I'm going to go the exact opposite. And I know there is that name, but what has Notre Dame done since the late '80s? I mean, I think we're getting to the point where most of the generation, most of the viewers equate Notre Dame to choking, to Notre Dame to not getting it done in the big game, for Brian Kelly to not be able to pull off a win. And honestly, I think the committee is going to put them up in a box with Washington. And Washington came out there. They gave the Pac-12. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, we don't have a way of knowing this because I don't know when Notre Dame. I mean, it took 6 years for Notre Dame to go undefeated and get in the conversation again. I don't know when we'll see it or if it'll even matter. But I think if they come out the gate next year and they're 10-0, 11-0, I think you're going to see them on the outside looking in because they don't want to see this again. And now, what if it's the same?
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see. I mean, but I just think. You saw Washington, even when they got hot, they never got that respect. They stuck them there in the fifth.
Yeah, but they're Washington. Nobody knows Washington, really.
Yeah. The Pac-12 is very hard to follow.
Over the last 40 years, Washington's been just as successful as Notre Dame. I mean, now if you want to go back to the 40s.
They don't have the height, though. But they don't have the height. That's what I'm saying. A lot of the
fan base
were in the 40s and 50s.
I don't think Notre Dame has any height now. I don't think Notre Dame carries the same. It's like UCLA in basketball. I don't think it carries the same hype anymore. I think a lot of that's gone. But I mean, like I said, we may never get to see. Notre Dame it may take them a decade to even do this again. But I just think Notre Dame was the laughing stock of the BCS when Alabama drug them through there 42-14, and you never really heard anything from them again. I just think, and now that you have humans making that decision, it's going to be interesting, but we may never get to see. So we're going to build onto that conversation that Mike
just
started.
To add to that one point, though, just add to that one point. Like a basketball is a little bit different than football because 68 teams make the basketball tournament. So your name doesn't really carry as much weight as it does in football.
I mean, but if that's the case, I mean, I can go back and get you a whole bunch of names that were prestigious back then. I mean, I don't think Miami would get that. If you had 5 undefeated teams and Miami was one of them, I think they would leave Miami out right now.
It depends who the other four are.
But who's your other four?
Yeah.
Who's your other four?
If you had
Alabama, let's say Clemson.
If you had Alabama, Clemson. Okay, let's put your guys' theory to the test. If next year, let's just play friendly here. Well, you couldn't really have Clemson and Miami in there.
And Miami.
But let's just say you had Ohio State, Alabama, Oklahoma, USC. Let's just say they come out of nowhere and go undefeated. Notre Dame and Miami, all 5 undefeated. Who's the one team left out?
I'm thinking either USC or Notre Dame. Honestly,
I agree with that.
So
I think the USC.
If you think about Miami's schedule, and next year it couldn't be possible anyways, the Alabama and Miami, because Alabama plays Miami first game of the season. But let's just say Miami's undefeated. They would have had to beat Alabama. They would have had to beat Florida State. They would have had to beat Clemson coming out the Atlantic division because Miami's in the Coastal division. So you're talking about a three good wins, sprinkled in with a couple other games that they may play teams that could be ranked, a Duke or Virginia Tech or something like that. Yeah, there's no way Miami gets left out.
Well, let's use that to segue into this next question that Mike started to touch on. Is it time Notre Dame fully commits to a conference? Like locks in for football. I don't care about the other ones right now, but they're an ACC participant, Big Ten participant. I don't, whatever. But is it time that they fully commit and play the 8 conference games, 9 conference games, conference championship, etc.? Mike.
I think so, just because the only reason why they hadn't joined a conference before was because their TV deal with NBC, and almost every team now has some type of TV affiliation. Like the Texas has the Texas channel, Oklahoma has a Sooner channel, the SEC has their own channel, the Big Ten has their own channel. So teams would open Notre Dame with open arms, allowing them to keep their TV deal just because that brings more money into the conference, into the school, etc. So it wouldn't matter anymore why they're being independent still. So yes, it's definitely time for them to join a conference. It doesn't matter what conference because they're kind of right there in the Midwest, and you have West Virginia playing a Kansas team, and it's like conferences really don't make any sense anymore.
All right, don't get us lost here, Billy. What do you got?
I'm going to say no. I really don't care because, I mean, when you think of the grand scheme of things, it's not as if they're getting an unfair advantage. I mean, who could really argue with a team that went undefeated that was actually playing real Power 5 schools?
What if they weren't?
For me, it's not as if – say again?
Say they aren't playing good schools, like say they're playing like
they are.
But let's say they're not. Like say
they don't get in if they're not playing good schools.
You don't
think
so?
Don't get in, and they know that.
Okay.
Being independent, they know with no conference championship, there's no way that we can play cupcakes all year and still get in. When we got teams, who knows what these other teams could do? The ACC is a down conference, but that champion is automatically going to get in regardless. The Big Ten and Big 12, they're going to get in if there's not two good SEC schools. So being independent, I think it's more work on them because now you have to schedule not necessarily the top dogs of every conference, but somewhere right at the top. So no, I mean I don't really care. It's not giving them an unfair advantage, not playing that conference championship game. So I don't really care.
I mean, to Billy's point on that, he's right. I mean, I think everybody would like to see him on a conference because it makes it neater. It makes that conversation go a little smoother. But, I mean, and look, I'm not going to stand on here and say that Notre Dame has the toughest schedule in the world because I don't think that these schedules are made so far in advance. To Billy's point, and I said the same thing about Alabama and other schools, it's hard to dictate who you're going to be in 3 or 4 years, especially in today's time where kids don't start immediately. They're going to transfer. You might think you have 8 years worth of quarterback when you got 2 freshmen, or you got a freshman and a sophomore, but in reality, one's probably going to bounce next year. So the worst team Notre Dame played. Exactly. The worst team Notre Dame all season. The worst team Notre Dame played was Ball State. And look, I'm not saying Ball State's world beaters by any means, but I'm going to steal Billy's point here, and we've argued with this. There's no Citadel on here. There's none of that. So I have to go. I don't think it really matters as long as they're continuing to do this. Now, if they start getting like the Alabama and the SEC, where they start thinking, hey, we're going to put a Citadel or 2 on here, then I think you have to reevaluate some things. The last thing here, just real quick, yes or no, is Clemson a better matchup for Bama than any other team that could have been matched up against them in the playoffs? Notre Dame or Oklahoma?
Yes.
Mike?
Yeah, I think they're the best shot.
All right, so we're going to move on here real quick here. We got Bama versus Oklahoma. Bama jumped out to a 28-0 lead. Pretty much kind of shocked everybody with that. And then I think even more shocking than that was Oklahoma didn't go away. They actually outscored from that point, outscored Bama 34-17, but they did end up losing 45-34. Was this game really that close? Or did Bama just get fat and sleepy on a 28-0 lead, Billy?
I think they got fat and sleepy on the 28-0 lead. I always say this with any team. They get the lead and they want to coast. And you can tell, they start being relaxed on defense. I just don't think guys were in it. Now, they wanted to embarrass Oklahoma. I just think human nature caught up with them, and they said, we're killing these boys. Let's just chill. I mean, it's just human nature to do that. You want to start trying new stuff, jumping over people, and it allow Oklahoma to get back in the game. But I in reality, I don't really think this game was ever really close. I don't think you ever really thought, man, Oklahoma really may pull this off. You always thought no, Bama's going to do what Bama do, and they're going to close the deal.
Yeah, and
Mike, what about you?
I have to agree of a lot of what he just said there. The only chance I think that Oklahoma really had is what it was toward the end of the third quarter with like 3 or 4 minutes left, and I believe they cut the lead down to like 11. They needed one big stop and then a score, either a field goal or a touchdown, and I think that would have swung it a little bit in their favor, but Alabama just kind of had that look in their eye that they weren't going to lose. Like it could be a 2-point game, and they still wouldn't have lost that game. So it was Alabama from the kickoff, like when they got up 28-3 or whatever it was.
28-0.
Yeah, he got ugly fast, and they just came out sluggish in the second half. But they turned it on when they ultimately needed to.
Yeah, I have to agree on this one. I actually, these are the type of games I hate. Either I want a game to be neck and neck the entire way and finish 56-50, or I want to see a team get embarrassed. I want to see Alabama beat them 70-0. I want to see because it's what happened. To Billy's point, now the offense didn't get aggressive, but you could tell the defense wanted to embarrass Oklahoma. And it actually hurt them.
They got tired of getting about Kyler Murray.
They did, and they got some goofy penalties. They got some. They left themselves open for some bad plays. They wanted to kill Kyler Murray, quote unquote, using that term in football, not in real life. And they took some bad angles and allowed Kyler Murray to run all over the place. But the offense never missed a beat. I mean, the offense had 3 times. I think they had a punt. But I mean, Tua was solid. The man had more touchdowns than incompletions. And I mean, if it wasn't for one silly offensive lineman getting a false start and I think a holding call, they would have had another touchdown going into halftime. They had 2 shots at 3 and 1, but each time it turned into a penalty. They had a touchdown that came back because of a penalty. I mean, this game, in my opinion,
it was never really close.
Yeah, it never really was, and you never really felt that Oklahoma could do enough to win. So, one final question regarding Oklahoma. We all said that pretty much coming into the Heisman that we thought Kyler Murray kind of deserved it more, but we thought Tua had the most hype. With everything that you've seen last night, now that at least from Oklahoma's standpoint, their season is capped, all 14 games are done. Do you still think that Kyler Murray deserved the Heisman? Mike?
Yes, Kyler Murray was hands down all that team's offense, the heart and soul of that team, etc. He definitely deserved the Heisman because Alabama can still win if Tua is not in the game, and they proved that in the SEC championship game when Hurt came in.
I think he deserved it. He played fantastic all year. He had the stats to back that up. Playing on a worse team, it depends on which way you want to bounce this argument. As valuable as in would they be with him or there without him? I don't think so. As Mike pointed out with Tua, and then stats. I mean, this guy had over 4,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, 70% completion percentage. I mean, he did his thing on the ground. Added another, I believe, it was 400 so yards. He deserved it.
No, I'm right there with both you guys, and I think even though the shellacking is the quarterback man is going to get the flack for this, the guy really played good. I mean, he didn't have any major turnovers. He didn't throw any interceptions. He threw a couple that could have been intercepted, but I think he actually showed you how good his arm was because he overthrew his receiver and the defender. So, I mean, no harm, no foul. But, yeah, I mean, the guy turned it on. And maybe if we talked about aggression, maybe if Lincoln Riley had kind of went for it on some of those spots, the game could have been uglier, but Kyler Murray could have got you touchdowns. Who knows?
That's the point I was going to make. That's the point I was going to make. I thought they first touchdown or that first field goal they kicked after going for it on 4th down and making it, I thought they should have just went ahead and tried for it instead of kicking the field goal right before halftime or right after halftime. Instead of kicking that field goal, I thought they probably should have went for it. To at least show your team, like, listen, let's not be scared of these guys. Because let's be honest, I think Oklahoma came out and they were shell shocked. They didn't know that it was really going to be like that, like playing Alabama. Like they hear all the stories and everybody said, well, Alabama is not the big bad wolf. They can be beat. until you really have to play them and you see, like, listen, like, the stories are real. I think Lincoln Riley let them down because he showed a scary mentality as well.
See, to your point, Bill, and this is the last thing before we move on to the next question. That is a great point. I think among the media, there's an SEC bias. When you turn on that TV, the guys on TV are talking pro-SEC. But among a lot of the fans, if you go to social media, if you go on Facebook, Twitter, there's a lot of SEC downplay. Oh, well, Alabama did that against a bad LSU. Oh, look how bad Tua played against a crappy Georgia team. They start laughing at them. They start trying to downplay everything. And I think it's somewhere in the middle. It's not as good as ESPN makes it sound. It's not as bad as the haters on the internet make it sound. And I think Oklahoma got to drinking that Kool-Aid. The defense said, whoa, if Georgia stopped Tua, we can stop Tua. If Georgia's D-line got to Tua, we can get to Tua. If Jake Fromm was able to move the ball, we can move the ball. The linemen start thinking, if Jake Fromm can get a pocket, we can give Kyler Murray a pocket. And I think it was a big splash in the face early on. Now, once they all got settled on and they was like, realized this is horrible, let's just do what makes Kyler Murray successful, they started getting some traction. But I think early on they started drinking that Kool-Aid. They started thinking Alabama's not playing anybody. They almost lost to the Citadel. And next thing you know, you find yourself down 28-0, and props to Oklahoma for not getting blown out 77-0 because
I agree to that. Yeah.
All right, moving on here. Quick glance. I'm giving you about 30 seconds on here. Bama, Clemson, Part 4. Who you got? Billy.
I want to say Clemson because I know what they got, and it holds true. The same for Nick Saban, guys that can move around and guys that can sling it, and Trevor Lawrence can really, really sling it. Their defense is also really, really good, which is the reason why each of the last 3 meetings have been good. But I think Bama. Listen, if you watched that game last night, and you watched the Georgia game, and you watched the LSU game, you know why Alabama is favored by so much every single game. Then there's no way. I'd be a fool to pick against them, honestly.
Mike, what about you?
I have to agree. And just to that point there, Mr. Hatton, Alabama played a scrambling quarterback this past night. They did well. They're playing a scrambling quarterback next Monday night. They're going to do well because they've seen it. They've done it. They know what to expect. Alabama's going to win, probably like 20 points.
Now, I don't see that. I don't know how Mike can go wrong in 2 directions and still be way off the map. I don't know if anybody would call Trevor Lawrence a scrambling quarterback, and then I don't think they're going to beat them by 20. Now, the real question is, and I didn't look into it much because I didn't have faith in Notre Dame, but I'm going to start searching into it. Will they get their guy back? That D-tackle?
That's what I was wondering.
Is he going to come back?
There's the Lawrence. I was wondering that as well.
If he can't come back, good luck. They didn't miss a beat against Notre Dame. That was the point that they said, oh, they're not missing their best D-tackle. He's not missing a beat. That's fine against Notre Dame. But when you have the running backs of Najee Harris, Damian Harris, and I'm drawing a blank on number 8, Josh Jacobs, you kind of need your best D-line. Let's be honest.
Now, I don't know if they need them as much. Now, that Huggins guy has played a lot this year, a lot. You know, they kept saying it last night. Dexter Lawrence played about 36 snaps a game. Huggins play about 20. That's really not that big of a difference when you think about it. You're doing that every single game. You're getting that experience because they still have Christian Wilkins, who is a 2-time All-American, the guy who really makes that D-line go. And Farrell, who's going to be a first-round pick as well. I think they'll be just fine without him.
Okay, so last question here, real quick. Like I said, real quick. Is this okay for college football that every playoff, minus the first one, has given us some form of Clemson, Alabama? Is that good? Are you okay with that? Real quick, Mike?
No, I'm getting tired of it.
All right, Billy?
Yeah, you must be a psychic because I didn't even know you was going to ask this question. I wrote that down in my notes. I'm tired of seeing my sports boring. Golden State, Alabama. It's the same. I hate it.
All right, so we're going to get away from those teams. We're sure going to focus on college football. Is an 8-team playoff still the best suggestion? Because it seems like we talk about all the trimmings. We talk about 3 through 7 a lot, whether it be Georgia, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Ohio State, even UCF got a lot of love. We talk about every team outside of it, but we're still on a collision course for Bama, Clemson. I mean, that's still 1 and 2. Is moving to 8 still the best answer to get the best 2 teams playing, or are we just making the playoffs longer and we're still going to get, if you have 2 dominant teams, they're still meeting no matter what? Billy?
I think eight teams is the best, because although I think Alabama and Clemson may be the best 2 teams, that doesn't mean that they can't be beat. Georgia had Alabama beat. You know, if a couple things go right, they win that game. The same Clemson, they can be beat. Imagine even a 16 playoff, and you got Ohio State now in the conversation as that other, you know, Power 5 champ, and then you add in Georgia as the wild card as the next best team. We're talking a total different ball game. So yeah, I mean, of course, 8 teams will be perfect.
And I
like that answer, Mike.
And I have to agree with that 100%. I want an 8-team playoff, not because, you know, Alabama or Clemson could lose. Like, I don't care if they both still made it to the championship game. That just means these last 2 weeks that there was all these mediocre games, they wouldn't consume my life. I would be looking to every Saturday now, like because you would have, I don't know, a number 1 Alabama versus a number 7 or a number 8 Ohio State team, and then the next game you have, you know, Clemson versus Georgia. I mean, it would be great football watching, because you'd have 4 games that, like, that first day start at 11 o'clock in the morning, go to 11 o'clock at night, and then the next week you have, you know, what, 4 or 2 more great games, and then you had the championship game. So all those previous 80-some games that we had to watch that were Ohio versus Tulane or something, I don't have to worry about that as much. You know, like, I can get excited about other games.
Well, I'm all for both great points, and I'm all for those smaller bowls, because I think it gives guys more playing time. As a Kentucky fan, watching my team try to rebuild and get to something great, it's going to be fun watching them play a team like Penn State. But it's also things like the temperatures changed. Nobody cares. I saw a lot, not just you, Mike, but I saw a lot of people say, "Oh, Michigan couldn't get up for a big bowl," or I'm sorry, a big bowl. Michigan didn't want to play in a meaningless bowl.
That's what I said.
I'm thinking the Peach Bowl is a New Year's Six bowl. The Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl.
It is a meaningless bowl game because you don't have a chance of winning anything just besides a Peach Bowl ring. Like, you don't have a chance of hosting that national championship game. So it's a meaningless game.
I think they also have these games too, Mike, for recruiting, because it's college. You know, it's good to say that we got this up underneath our belt when we're going into a kid's home.
I definitely understand that.
So I think that's why they have these other. No, I'm with you on the Belk Bowl and the Dollar General Bowl. Like, get those out of here. Like, please, just get those out of here.
I think a happy median on the bowl game would be about 25, 30 games, not 110 or how many there are, or there are 110 teams.
I want to. All right, so I don't want to get down to that rabbit hole because we need to wrap up the college football segment. But tomorrow I would love to have a bigger discussion in bowls and some things like that, because we've had some great conversations off air about meaningless bowls versus this bowl versus that bowl, and I'd love to really dive into it and have a full conversation. But one last question for you guys. In college, we all discussed, actually I think Mike was right, me and Billy had a pretty good show and a pretty good discussion that we thought that Notre Dame deserved to be in for going undefeated, but we didn't think they were one of the best 4. Do you think it's time that we get rid of the term most deserving when you look at 12 semifinal games? There's been over 6 years, there's been 12 semifinal games. Only 2 of those 12 games have been decided by 10 points or less. Only 3 of those 12 games have been decided by 14 points or less. I believe 7 of them have been by 4 touchdowns or more. So, or no, I think it was 4 of them, something like that. They're not been close games. The semifinals haven't been exciting. So Billy's point, the championship game, aside from when Ohio State beat Oregon, everything we've got in Georgia versus Alabama, Clemson versus Alabama has been great games. But those semifinals haven't lived up to the hype. Is it time we get rid of going with the most deserving and going with the 4 best, or should we still stick with, hey, you went undefeated, hey, you won your conference? Might go.
I don't think the question is the best or worst team. It is the amount of time between their last game and this first semi-game. It is hard to practice a month for the same team. If they just move that up a little bit, I think these games would be a lot closer. So the most deserving teams would still put up a good fight, like against Alabama or Clemson, the last four years. But at the same time, I do want the best 4 teams in there, even if they're not undefeated. So I think we just need to put the best 4 teams in there, move the semifinal up a little bit, and I think everything will be gravy.
Well, I'm all with you on the best.
Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
I was just going to address Mike's point. I do think the best 4 should be in, but you open up a whole bunch of can worms because that becomes very suggestive when you throw out undefeatedness versus that.
Everything is
but
suggestive.
To Mike's point, right, I agree. But to Mike's point, that time it didn't affect Bama. It doesn't affect Clemson. It didn't affect Oregon in the early year when they beat Florida State, I think 59-20. I mean, it doesn't affect one side. How can it affect the other?
Thank you, Matthew, for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
No problem. I got you, Billy. Duke beat Kentucky by 34. We're even. But how come? So to that point, Mike, how come it affects one side? How come it almost feels like, to your point, then it affects the guy that got in because they deserved way more than it affects the actual good team. So if you give us 4 best teams, maybe there wouldn't be that.
I think it's because the players get in their head like this team is so much better, so much better that it is like they've heard that they're going to get beat for a month and a half. That you walk out there and you hear it all week and you're like, or for like all month, and you're like, well, shit, I guess we're going to lose. So, I mean, I think that is it comes more with coaching experience. Like I think. So, I think that's why those 3 and 4 seeds have the issue. It's because they haven't been there type thing yet, and their coaches are very young and usually inexperienced.
Dollar in the swear jar. Go, Billy.
Well, yeah, I don't want to – I think – I wouldn't say they really let the most deserving team in, but I think to help this issue out so that we get the 4 best teams, because right now the mantra isn't the 4 best teams. It's the top 4. And that's why they have rankings. I think the best scenario, the best thing that we're going to get the best 4 teams is if we eliminate the rankings and let the committee start from week 1 rating their best teams. Because I think having the computers do it through week through week 8 or week 9, when they do it on that Tuesday after week 9 or week 8, whenever they do it, I think that's where the confusion come in. So we just start right off the bat. You got the committee. They're ranking the teams from week 1 all the way to week 13 for those people that got 13 games. I think it'll be better than having the ranking system, because once you have a ranking system, sometimes it gets hard to kind of correct something. It's hard to say, well, we had Notre Dame at 3 for 9 straight weeks. How can we justify taking them out of the top 4? Rather than if we got committees doing it week by week, we can just say, hey, well, week 1, they didn't do this. We moved them out. I think it'll be much better if we do it that way.
So to your point, Billy, I definitely agree. The problem is, and then you talked about this, the problem is perception. Yep. Because when the committee came out, that's what it was supposed to be. They tried to drill in our head that each week the committee would start from scratch.
Yep.
But I don't think the public, outside of your super hardcore fans, the public doesn't understand. Well, my team didn't do anything wrong. Why did we drop? Or my team won. That team lost. Why is that team ahead of us? I'm in a lot of Kentucky fan pages, and for most of the year, especially after Kentucky started losing and Florida beat LSU, Florida was ahead of Kentucky, and Kentucky put a pretty good whooping on Florida. And a lot of the casual fans couldn't understand it. And I was like, sometimes you got to go deeper than just numbers. Sometimes you got to look at what team's playing harder, what team's better, what teams beat who. At the end of the season, they were still like, why is Florida ranked higher? And I was like, well, Kentucky's worst loss was against a bad Tennessee. Florida's worst loss was against a pretty decent and actually ranked at the time Missouri team. So I'm like, but I think it's tough for fans to buy into that. So that's why I think the real answer, and I love that answer, Billy, but I think the real answer is you just expand it to 8. And if you expand it to 8, your chances of getting the best 4 double.
True.
You know,
True.
You're going to get some turds in there. You're going to get some 50-2 wins.
If you don't get your
You're going
good
to
game.
some, yeah, you're also going to get the best 4. So I think the best, you want to catch the best fish in the sea, just get a bigger net. And that's the thing that we're going to do. All right, I got one quick